Hello, welcome back to C's Story Corner. Let's jump into Book 7 of my youth romantic comedy As Wrong as I Expected. As a reminder, I'm reviewing the book, not the anime. This book was different. It was definitely good, but, well, at first it felt disjointed from the rest of the series, until I realized why. Then it made sense. The biggest thing is the emotional intensity isn't really there throughout most of it. And after just how much turmoil our dear protagonist has suffered, especially in books 6 and 6.5. But the main reason for all that turmoil was Hachiman's position socially at school. Since this book is about their 4-day field trip, and he's surrounded by people who either don't actively hate him or have to be minimally amiable since they need his help, that tension isn't there. That's at least one break for poor Hachiman, and he really needs it. He gets that break until the end of the book, when he's forced to focus on things weighing him down again. The book starts off showing little has changed for him in class. People are making a show of ignoring him and whispering about him behind his back and shooting glares at him. Hayama's group of guys also delight in making him the butt of all their jokes. It's to the point where Hachiman admits to crying in bed at night. How I wish I could say I didn't understand this. It was actually kind of painful to read, and I ended up putting the book down and walking away for a bit. Though, if you've never dealt with extreme and relentless bullying and harassment, you'd probably not see anything troubling about it, or how it could trigger that level of emotional response. Which is good. No one should have to experience that, especially as a kid. Anyway, the second years are super excited about their half-week-long field trip to Kyoto, which, can I say, this is just really cool. Seemed all field trips ended by junior high, and they were never longer than a day trip where everyone left after school started and got back before it ended. How awesome that there's such a great opportunity to try your hand at adulting in high school, as part of the curriculum. Even though I honestly think this, I'm pretty sure it would have been excruciating for me. The sleep deprivation alone, then all the crowds. Well, the only thing that matters is Hachiman is actually pretty excited for the trip, so we'll go with that. A few days before the trip, the service club gets a request from a rather unexpected character, Tobi Kakeru. And I would just like to mention that he's the one being the most obnoxious about publicly mocking Hachiman. Tobi wants to confess his feelings for Ebina Hina, the Fujoshi, who's one of Miura's girls. The problem is, he doesn't want to be rejected, which is something that seems to be a given considering Ebina. Despite this, Tobi has the support of the two other underlings in Hayama's clique, and superficially, Hayama's support. Very superficially. After thoroughly insulting Hachiman and getting told off by Yukino for it, Tobi ignores her demand for him and the Hayama clique to leave, and asks for their help with confessing so he doesn't end up being rejected. As you can guess, Yukino isn't keen on this request, and Hachiman outright opposes it. Silently, through intense looks at Yukino. But the oblivious bird brain Yui is super excited, and pressures the two of them into accepting. The problem is, they have no idea where to start or where to go from whatever starting point they figure out. Fun, huh? More fun than this, the next day they get another request, this one from Ebina. She doesn't like the change happening among her group of friends, and asks them to make sure the guys get closer on the field trip, adding a request for Hachiman to get nice and intimate with Hayama's dudes as well. Something he outright refuses to do. Though they do take on her request to get the boys' relationship back on track. Hachiman suspects that's not actually what she's asking for, though he tries really hard not to read into what she's saying. Though ultimately, he has to, for him to understand the wishes of the entire Hayama Miura clique. The field trip starts off with a dismal failure for Tobi, orchestrated by Ebina, and not improved through the help of Hayama. One attempt after another to give Tobi and Ebina a chance to spend some time alone, and offer the opportunity for Tobi to confess, fails terribly. It doesn't take long for Hachiman to recognize Hayama's attempt at sabotaging this, though it seems to take longer for him to get Ebina's actions are deliberately trying to stop Tobi. She even gets Hachiman alone to reiterate her request to keep the boys close to each other when she's around so she can enjoy the sight. It doesn't stop there. During the field trip, Hachiman gets 2 more requests. One from Miura, the popular queen, and the other from Hayama, the popular king. And though Hayama's, Miura's, and Ebina's requests are all in line with each other, they go completely against Tobi's. While Tobi wants his relationship with Ebina to evolve and grow, the other 3 want the current relationship to stay the same. They're happy with everything as it is, and they don't want to lose this. It's at this point Hachiman is forced to face his own problems. Quote, Things you can't see, can't understand, can't grasp, can't figure out. They all lead to fear and anxiety. Quote, "The world was full of so many things I didn't understand. The meaning of this rock garden, people's true faces, and how to engage with others." There's so much he doesn't understand about Yukino, but he realized during the sports festival he wanted to. He wants to understand her and learn to engage and be comfortable with her and Yui. At the same time, he honestly doesn't see their relationship lasting much longer. But, like Hayama and company, he doesn't want his relationship with Yukino to end. He doesn't want to lose that comfort he has with Yukino and Yui in the service club. But for Hachiman, it's not a real relationship. It's based on lies and could fall apart at any moment, as he'd already been shown twice. And not just at any moment. All he has to do is speak, and it'd shatter. So when he sees how desperately Hayama clings to his relationships with his clique, to the point of sacrificing another's desires, so the majority keeps their own, it makes him mad. Hachiman scolds Hayama. Quote, "If that's enough to destroy those relationships, then that's all they ever were, right?" Implying that they were worthless and fake to begin with. But Hayama doesn't care about how genuine they may or may not be, because, quote, "Maybe you're right, but what's gone won't come back." Hachiman can't argue against this. Hayama eventually drives his point home with, quote, "Sometimes it's more important not to lose something than it is to gain something else." Hachiman points out the selfishness of that statement, but also understands, because he's doing the same thing. Regardless of what Yukino wants, regardless of what's best for Yukino and Yui, Hachiman doesn't want to lose what he's finally gained. And so, for those relationships, which are utterly important to Hayama, Miura, and Abina, Hachiman figures out a way to show Tobi how important it is not to confess, and saves the group's comfortable dynamics. And how does he do this? Just as he did for Yukino. He sacrifices himself. He steps up and confesses before Tobi can and gets shut down hard. And it hurts. 'Cause even though he didn't like her or want to date her, it still hurts being rejected. And he still has open wounds from being rejected years earlier. Not to mention, just confessing is painful. And though confessing to someone you don't really like isn't as painful as doing it for someone you do, it's still embarrassing. Besides, if his life holds true, Hachiman could easily end up repeating the painful experience of being the laughingstock of the class, if not the school, again. Hayama's apologizing doesn't help. Neither does what happens when Yukino and Yui step forward. Standing in a beautiful forest of bamboo, a romantic spot where many girls, Yui included, would love to be confessed to, with his heart already bruised, he sees just how much his actions hurt the two he's come to care for. Yukino can't even beat him down, scold him, or banter with him. She can't find the words to begin with, and leaves quite angry. And Yui ends up giving him a rather impassioned plea to consider others' feelings more, and asks him to stop doing these things. The whole thing is even more heartbreaking when you remember what he admits to internally in the first chapter. Quote, "I had to encourage myself or I'd break a little. There was already a slight chip on one of my edges, and I'd even cried a little in bed at night. I pride myself on my diamond-level hardness, according to the superhuman hardness scale. But diamond is just strong against scratches. They actually break right apart if you give them a good whack with a hammer. You said diamond is unbreakable, didn't you? You lied." And what really makes me mad after reading this is how Yukino, Yui, and Hayama are all looking down on Hachiman. After pestering him so much about doing a job and only considering what they want, not once considering him. He's standing there hurting. He's been hurting for years. And since the cultural festival, it's only grown exponentially. But instead of considering his feelings and trying to understand him enough to not force him to do things that leave him feeling like hurting himself is the only way to help those he's being forced to help, they just say, "Sorry, I know this is the only way you know how to handle these things," and leave without a backward glance. Or get angry at him and storm off. Or tell him to think about others more than he already is. And all three of them are directing their anger at him. Instead of considering him and his pain, instead of considering their own roles and his misery, they're still only thinking about themselves and how they feel. It seems none of them realize, on any level, he considers himself worthless. They don't stop and try figuring out why he chooses to go about things the way he does, or why he'd think of such tactics in the first place. While he's desperately trying to understand those around him, no one gives a flip about him, even the one who had a crush on him. They just don't care. And that sums up his life pretty well. And it makes sense why he feels that, quote, "I want to say that, often, the right thing is to stay the same. Why change?" And he's right. Why change? It's never done anything good for him in the past, and no one in the present cares enough about him now to bother with him, so why not stay the same? But even as he's thinking this, he hasn't given up his desire to understand Yukino and to hold on to the service club. Neither does he feel animosity toward them concerning this. He just blames himself, which is making the problem worse. But some habits are hard to break. Now, I know I haven't mentioned any specific themes, but honestly, this book was less about exploring concepts, and more about illustrating more poignantly the troubles Hachiman is currently facing by showing a more superficial parallel with what's happening with Haima's clique. And at the end, when Hachiman figures out a way to save the populars by sacrificing himself, is Wataru-san alluding to the ultimate solution Hachiman will find for saving his own group? And when it comes time to saving his safe place, will it also involve sacrificing himself, or will he have to sacrifice someone else? Or will some outsider step up and lay themselves down for our little trio? Gotta keep reading to find out. On a lighter, fluffier note, before you get hit with these harsh realities at the end, you do get to enjoy Hachiman's reprieve from the bullying and harassment for a few chapters. He even gets to enjoy a good bit of time with our cutie pie, Saika. So at least Hachiman gets to enjoy that, and the poor kid needs more of that pure goodness in his life. Don't ever change, Saika. Continue being the beautiful angel you are. Well, this one was a little shorter, but I hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe and healthy, everyone.